Right, Season 7 patch notes, the full thing. We're going to try and go through it quickly because there's a lot of information here and I don't want to make it too long. So let's begin with the skins right away. Heimdall, Morrigan, Fenrir, and Ares get a skin that are all in the Enchanted Chronicles Battle Pass. Ares is just a recolor. The Enchanted Chest contains Spellslinger Sol, which is a really cool skin. Eternal Tormentor Zeus is in a new type of bundle that we get to in a second. Alexandrite, the goddess that can't be named, is the new Commendation reward for this year. Unbreakable Anhur is the rank reward for this year. Necromancer, Persephone, and Enchanted Cu Chulainn, Enchanted Boyfriend Cu Chulainn, are in the Valentine chest. The frog looks as gross as you would expect, so that's pretty cool. Merciless, Monarch Oleron, and Drunkard Bacchus are in the Jade Corruption, I think it's event, and there's an easy Freezy chest for Freezy Chibi Ymir. So first of all, new DLC. This is where the Zeus skin is and this is actually very interesting because this is a bundle that unlocks every god that comes out this year for you to play. So it's basically, in that sense, the same as the god pack. But on top of that, you get a recolor for them as well, or the recolor for them, the normal recolor, and you get an additional limited recolor that you can only get through this chest. And you also get every wave and clap emote of all these gods, as well as far as I remember, they said the voice packs too. Now it doesn't say voice packs here, which is a bit confusing. I think if this bundle contains the voice packs, it should be worth it even if you have the god pack. Otherwise, maybe a little less, but because it's just a recolor you get and this one limited skin. So if you want the Zeus skin, of course, you might want to get this. I'm not sure why the voice packs aren't mentioned anymore. Maybe that's a mistake. Depending on if they're in there or not, the value of that bundle will greatly decrease or increase. But you may also want the limited recolors depending on how they look. Update release schedule. We have the Enchanted Chronicles Battle Pass coming out first. That's the one you saw, and the Enchanted Chest shortly afterwards. Then we have one of those new Red Bull bundles for Albert Hammond Jr., and then we have Season Pass, Digital Deluxe Edition. But Season Pass is actually, I think it's not even mentioned further here as well, because that's another interesting topic. And then we have the other stuff. And in February, we have the Valentine Chest, Jade Corruption Bundle 1, which is part of an event, and the Easy Free Chest. So the Battle Pass is going to get an overhaul, which I think is a good thing. The Prestige Pass is being removed, and the total amount of points required is decreased from 75,000 to 60,000. Which makes it a lot more accessible for people playing a little more casually. And I think that is very reasonable. I know initially they listened a lot to the people that have a lot of time to play Smite, but not everyone does. And not everyone got to the end of this. And then there are various other like visual changes along with that. And you can now also get the recolor skin that is coming by just playing the normal battle pass. You don't have to buy it anymore, like the free battle pass. So you get the Ares skin for free. So that's pretty nice, especially if you don't have the original skin of that yet. So a free skin for everyone, and then various other changes. And they're also changing up the chests. I can't exactly say if that's better or worse. I think it's actually a bit worse because you can get a lot of ward skins and avatars in the battle chest as well, which has a chance to get better skins. I think the other chests were a little bit better. I think Enigma was a little bit better. So I think they're nerfing these, but don't quote me on that. That's just as far as I recall from my knowledge of these chests. But they changed overall. But then you also get a free skin, so hey. And then there are the free track items listed here again. There's just various avatars, icons, blah, blah, blah that you can get in title. And then the premium track with a lot more gimmicky stuff that I'm not going to go into detail again. Not that important. New event, Jade Corruption. That's an event where you can buy bundles again. We've had those before, which is going to be 3 exclusive god bundles, and each bundle has 2 skins and 2 additional cosmetic items and an Imperial coin. And I guess these coins can be used to buy skins later. I'm assuming it doesn't exactly explain that here, but if you buy all 3 bundles, you will unlock an unlimited Poseidon skin. Important, Poseidon, not one of the new gods or something. So this event may still get other skins for other gods, for new gods or something. We'll see. We have a massive set of bug fixes. I think one that is definitely worth pointing out here is fixed an issue in all modes where swordsmen and archers in lane would sometimes stand further apart than intended. They should always stand about 35 units away from each other now. And that's important for clearing with certain gods with the AoE abilities. I don't know what would happen for them to go further apart. But that, yeah, that's fixed. And then the Buildingman glitch in Duel is fixed. And we have a whole lot of other set of fixes. 2 PC, 2 controller, keyboard and mouse, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to go through every single one of them. The Joust OCE issue is apparently not fixed yet, which is very frustrating. But yeah, these ones are the ones that are fixed. And then a whole set of guard fix issues. Of course, there's a massive amount here for Heimdall, and then some other small fixes across the board. Yemoja gets her Omi loss fix as well, which I think is important. But overall, yeah, a lot of smaller things here and some skin changes as well. So that's all cleaned up. The daily login update now will be basically claimed like earlier. It will automatically be claimed when you go into the game. You don't have to go to the store anymore. And the reward amount stays the same, which is very nice for us. There are new tags on home screen that mark things as new when they just come out. The engine is getting updates, which will decrease the installation file size of Smite as well as update size, which is going to be nice, but it means that with 7.1 you have to download the entire game once for that to get into place. So there's a pro and a con to that, I guess. And the improved texture pack is installed by default, and they are making various other changes, so I'm hoping this will fix some of the issues. The load up should be quicker as well, no less problems with antivirus software if you haven't added it to exceptions yet. So a lot of changes in that regard, which I think will hopefully be nice. Surrender is changed as well. If now you have 3 people voting yes to a surrender, 1 person voting no, and the last person not voting, you will surrender the game instead of not surrendering, because the person that's not voting is no longer counted as a no. The VGS attack the minions is added to all game modes, which I think is very nice, especially in Conquest as well. So you can press VAN in order to give that command, and then it'll tell the ally to attack the minions. There are new mini-map icons for only buffed minions as well as fire minions, so you can tell when there's a more dangerous wave in one of the lanes. And jungle camp timers now show up the moment someone kills the camp if you witness that, even if it's the enemy and they're not picking up the buff right away or something. So that's a bit more visual clarity. Lots of skins that are added to the Awesome Godlike and Battle chest. So, yep, you can scroll through all that. And so, all modes, swordsmen and archers in lane will now stand slightly closer together, which is interesting because they have this fixed. I don't know if this is separate from that, but either way, that is an interesting change for certain guards with circle AoE abilities. And in Conquest, we have a massive set of changes. The first one is a new objective called Jungle Shrine. The shrine gains a stack for every 3 jungle camp monsters you kill, or your team kills, not jungle camps, every 3 monsters. So 1 camp counts as a stack in most circumstances, because most camps have 3 monsters, some only have 2. Up to 7 stacks. Attacking the shrine consumes 1 stack and rewards each player on your team with 5 gold. 3 quick basic attacks will clear the shrine of all stacks. So essentially, usually you go there after 7 camps, and then you basic attack that thing 3 times, and you will get 35 gold for your entire team. Each team's shrine cannot be attacked by enemy players. Clearing camps in the enemy jungle will contribute towards your shrine, but at half the rate, so you get less stacks for doing that, which I guess is acceptable. So a little bit more of a reward for clearing your own jungle, a lot of a reward for farming in your jungle a lot, and not so much for killing. A lot of reward for your team. I think this is a very unfortunate structure. I don't like this idea of how it's being made, but at least it's not only the jungle's job to pick this up, because the mid laner can rotate there as well and pick up the shrine in between. I don't know if there's going to be any visual notification when it's full. I hope there is, because otherwise it's going to be even more annoying to deal with. Unfortunate number of 7 camps, in my opinion, because sometimes you will just be somewhere else on the map when that happens. I think some more full stacks would be nice. Added 2 single alpha harpy camps next to the dual lane. So it's 1 harpy on each side. 700 base health, 8 physical protection, 6 magic protection, 24 physical power base, and 35 gold reward, 40 XP reward. Relatively tanky, relatively high damage, apparently, and relatively low reward. I would say in many situations you might be better off going to the oracles. But you have to test out how that feels in game. At least this is just one of them. Very beefy target that gives you a bit more of a purpose, but can be a bit risky to be done because the enemy team can invade you on that. Split XP on split the mid XP camp near oracles into 2 camps. Each camp contains 2 small harpies, not 2 big harpies. So a bit of a different XP distribution there overall. Remove Gold Fury from the Fury spawn pool after 20 minutes. So less extra raw gold at that point, which I think is interesting. XP split bonus increased from 20% to 25%, meaning sharing camps a little bit better again in sharing lanes. Not my favorite change. Adjusted initial jungle camp spawn delays. Speed and Void, purple buff, both spawn at 20 seconds now. In Speed case, that's down from 23 as well, and Void from 32. All the other camps start at 30 seconds, down from 32. And with the exception here of mid-harpies. Interesting thought that I have at the moment about this. What we used to do last season is we used to have the jungler and the mid laner go to speed together and then they'd split up. It could be possible with these changed spawn timers that you could go speed, well, with a fast clearing jungler and mid that is, speed to the back harpies and then straight to mid. And I'm not sure how much XP you would lose out on, but I think you could get pressure relatively easily. And you could maybe offset that little bit of XP loss by then dominating all of mid lane. Could be possible. I have to test that in game, but with these changed spawn timers, it's an interesting concept, at least in how that will play out. Changed various stats of jungle monsters here. They generally get a little bit more health and slightly higher protections. In return, Assassin's Blessing will see a buff, making it harder for non-junglers to clear these overall. And the gold reward for towers is also adjusted. So tier 1 towers will give 75 gold instead of 100, and tier 2 towers will give 250 gold instead of 300. So more gold from other things, less from pushing towers. Totem of Cu reward also being adjusted, with the gold going down from 25 to 20 gold, but again, that's a new jungle shrine. The MP5 buff scales with 3 tiers. 10 MP5 from 0 to 5 minutes, 20 MP5 from 5 to 10 minutes, and 30 MP5 from 10 to 15 minutes. Very interesting change in my opinion. Added assist cards for the Totem of Cu and the new jungle features. Decreased attack range from the Spirit Archer in Duo Lane. Didn't even know that, a different one. FX has been upgraded across the entire map. What? This is odd. Jungle buff changes. Okay, they just structured it poorly. So first of all, mana buff now gives a 20. No longer gives a 20 MP5 increase, but now gives 2 MP5 per 10% of missing mana. I think they said 10 MP5% in the patch. I'm gonna actually look that up real quick because I don't want to be wrong here. I have a few things that I wanted to look up, and this one in particular, because there's so many changes that are a bit odd, to say the least. Okay, well, that's not up to date as well. Right, I don't even know what the updated version is. I guess the Smite wiki has not updated them, unless that information that's written there is completely wrong. Whatever, we'll just take it. Apparently, according to that, it's currently 20 MP5, and now instead you only get 20 MP5 if you're really low on mana, because you get 2 MP5 per 10% missing. So say if you are at 50% mana, or you miss 50% of your mana, then you would have 10 MP5 at this point. Red buff gets the 5% power bonus versus guards removed. Completely understandable. And speed buff gets a 10% crowd control reduction added. Interesting change, maybe to hold off the jungler a little shorter when you CC him when he ganks you. Overall, I'm not the biggest fan. I don't think that's going to change much. And void buff removed 2 protections reductions per enemy guard within the aura radius. Removed additional 5% protection reduction. Instead, added 10% attack speed, which means that effectively this will be a lot more interesting for ADCs and for Sylvanas. This also means that there's a huge value in trying to get both void buffs. I mean, there was before, but now you can kind of get more of a noticeable effect on one hand through the additional void effect, but then you also have the attack speed, which again, especially with Sylvanas and an ADC, could be completely crazy. But on the other hand, the void buff will spawn earlier, so the enemy team has a much easier time securing it as well, especially with a new Hand of the God, which we'll get to. What's weird is, and you'll see that later, even with the item changes, there isn't that much of an incentive for the support to stay in duo specifically, even after all this, and you'll see why. Joust gets new NPCs, the whole map is updated. The damage camp spawns at 20 seconds now, 2 minutes now, so the first waves will be without the damage camp. There is basically 33% XP split bonus. There is a new speed camp and a whole lot of other things. I think talking about Joust in detail here might actually be a bit too much. A lot of the details that are mentioned here I've already covered in my Joust video, so feel free to check that out if you're specifically looking for all the Joust info. Invading is less rewarded here as well, 50% gold and XP, but this penalty is slowly reduced over time, becoming 0% at 20 minutes, so later on invading makes more sense. And the gold reward for towers also goes down a lot, the gold reward for phoenixes goes down a lot, 75 and 100 respectively, and reduced base player kill gold reward from 300 gold to 200 gold. I'm not actually really sure what that's. Base player kill. I didn't know that had a different value or something, but hey. And then we have decreased XP values for the minions, melee brute and everything, but increased gold. The large XP camp also gets an XP decrease, but the small minion camp gets a gold increase. So a lot of shifts in sets here to all the camps that will make the whole balance of the map feel different, and honestly we can't really judge that until we've felt it in game. And the buff changes here are also for red buff you have 10 physical and magical 10% extra physical magical power plus an additional 10 magical power or 5 physical power. Mana buff gives you 20 MP5 and 10% cooldown reduction, and speed buff gives you 10% movement speed and attack speed. Very interesting. And you also get this movement speed upon leaving the fountain now, which we have in Conquest already, and that's in basically, I don't know if it's in all modes, but it's in, well, it's in Joust, it's in Duel, it's in Clash, and it's in Assault, maybe not in Siege or something, I don't know. So that's gonna be a nice feature, especially in those modes where you have to be relatively quick, being Joust and Clash, where there's not as much time before the match starts really to do things. Q's getting a change as well. And that's not what I was hoping for. This is not multi-queue for smaller regions. Please, please, please add that, Hi-Res. Please listen. We need that desperately. But it is variance for ranked. Variance will be visible in the same way that the MMR value is on the ranked profile page, so you can see variance. We'll update every match. It can reach a cap of 5% after many games played. Higher variance results in larger MMR changes based on wins and losses. So if you win a lot, yeah, variance goes up, and then you can climb higher, I think. But then it also says variance decreases the more matches you play, which I guess means like if you play more matches staying around the same area, your variance would go down. Or like if you have played a lot of matches in total and the system thinks it has placed you right. MMR will no longer be reset at the start of each split. Instead, variance will reset. This should provide a much more stable environment for ranked matchmaking. I hope so. Players will be able to reach their more accurate MMR and stay there longer. Players will get a variance reset on a regular interval, giving them power to break free from their current MMR. So if you get hard stuck, then with the next season you may be able to get out through the variance reset because it might push you with your wins more. Changed each split gem rewards quest from win 50 games to play 50 games. So even if you're not winning that much, that's nice for you. I'm assuming they will probably do the same thing for the skins and everything as well. God leaderboards will now only reset at a new season and at mid-season. And that brings us to the big section of item balance. Specialist Blessing gets 10 HP 5, makes it a little bit more interesting. Nice for certain niche gods now. Guardian's Blessing, removed MP5, removed 7 HP and mana restore per minion assisted. Now provides plus 7 HP 5 and MP5 while within 60 feet, or I think units, of an allied god. Lasts for 10 seconds, refreshes duration when near an allied god. So, given that normally it would be per minion, we have like 6 minions, you would get this restore throughout the wave in terms of assist. You can now clear more aggressively with supports because you don't have to worry as much about the assist aspect. But I think it would still be relevant for gold, I'm assuming at least. Yeah, you would still try and get assists for the evolve as well and everything. So it's just from the sustain perspective you can do this. And instead you get the same over 30 seconds, which would be the same as the wave spawn anyways. So sustain-wise, not much changed in that regard. But you will get less mana because the mana restore is removed and the MP5 is removed as well. And at the same time, this will not be viable in solo anymore because you're just not getting any sustain, even if you play passive. So in solo, you cannot run Guardian's Blessing. Yeah. And that, by the way, just made me realize that Warrior's Blessing did not get a nerf, which is very surprising. I don't know how to feel about that. But here's new Guardian's Blessing. Wait a second. I'm realizing more and more things as I go through these patch notes that I'm not that happy with. Even though I'm hoping that the season will have a good start. Assassin's Blessing and Evolved Assassin's Blessing is still a terrible item. Congratulations. Now increased the damage against jungle monsters from 35 to 40%. But that really doesn't mean that it's stronger. It just means that jungle camps have more HP and you deal a little more damage to offset that. So it's not getting buffed. It's just a little bit easier for junglers to clear the camps compared to everyone else. Which is already what they're doing, and also we're getting more benefits from sharing again, so it's just... guys, what are you doing? But this one's cool. Vision Shard is that new free relic, which I already talked about, that you get at the start of the game, which allows you to place a ward, and this ward lasts for 60 seconds, but has a 120 seconds cooldown. So you won't have a ward at all times, you have to frequently place that, or you can cycle that like in dual lane with your ADC. So, yeah, ganking is not necessarily going to be as easy everywhere, and people are going to learn a little bit more about warding, so that's very nice. And yeah, these wards don't provide any gold rewards, but players can teleport to them. I still find it unfortunate that they don't provide any gold reward because that makes sentrying against them a bit less rewarding, and you still have to sentry if you want to clear out wards. So hey, consumables, a new Hand of the Gods. This consumable deals 150 true damage around you, only affects monsters on your side of the jungle. It doesn't really say what happens to like neutral camps, and it used to say something about doing more damage if you use it. If you as an added benefit for a jungler, the Assassin's Blessing will further boost this damage, making it more difficult for anyone to steal from the burst. And I think the damage number that I saw there was 225 true damage from Hand of the Gods. Question is, how good will this feel? It didn't look that overwhelming, but they did tested it against very high level camps. I want to see how good it really feels against lower level camps. How effective will it be for securing? Why is it not mentioned anywhere in the description here again that Assassin's Blessing will buff this, or how much it will buff it? That's weird. And you can only carry one at a time. It might be interesting to pick that up on Charon. It might not go that way. We'll have to find out. But I'm thinking it might be a very popular item, though you sacrifice a bit of sustain items at the start because it is 100 gold. Rework, Potion of Power. No longer, we don't have a physical and a magical power potion anymore. Instead, we have one that does both. And it gives you 70 magical power or 40 physical power and 10% cooldown reduction. This is very interesting for physical characters because most physical characters before got this extra damage effect, which I guess is nice. It's definitely effective. But I think the CDR offers a more open playing field because you basically only have to build a 30% CDR now, and you can get the last bit from this, which is especially effective for higher power builds. That only get so much CDR. So I think this is going to be a very interesting change. On that note, high power builds are just as effective as before as well. Transcendence and Heartseeker still. Yep, they're still the same. Chalice of Healing, Healing Potion, and all the pots, except multipot no longer stack, and you can, instead they just line up, basically refreshing the duration, and you cannot do that from base with the Chalice because if you tried that, the fountain will override that healing effect, and the same is true for the mana potion. So if you want to have higher sustain in solo, then you'll have to start with Chalice and multipots now. Neutral items. This is a very interesting one. Mystical Mail, decreased cost from 2,700 to 2,450, decreased health from 300 to 200. A very nice trade-off for getting this effect, which is honestly more important than a little bit of the survivability stats that you can get in other ways. So yeah, an absolutely effective item now that I think we'll see a lot of the season due to how it works here and how strong it in general is anyways. Witchblade, increased health from 200 to 250, also absolutely interesting. Already a strong counter item, but kind of hard to fit into some tank builds. This definitely makes it a bit easier. Shogun's Kusari, increased attack speed, aura from 20 to 25%. Was a little bit underwhelming before, and I think this is helping it a little bit, just giving it a bit of a boost. I think especially for like magical ADCs and stuff, it can be very effective too. Sovereignty, very interesting boost here with the HP 5, sorry, being increased from 25 to 35, which as far as I understand it is the aura effect of that. Let me just quickly check that as well, just to make sure that I'm not mistaken here. Yeah, the entire HP 5 is on the aura. There's no separate HP 5 or something. So your entire team or everyone around you that gets this effect heals more. Quite a fair bit as well. 10 HP 5 is not to be underestimated. Some items just have 10 HP 5. And similarly, Hardwood Amulet MP5 increased from 20 to 30. I honestly think that Hardwood gets the short end of the stick here. Not only does Sovereignty get more HP 5 than Hardwood that gets MP5, I also would say that, especially in laning phases, HP 5 is the stronger stat. Does not mean that Hardwood is completely useless or anything, but I just wanted to point that out. I think Sovereignty is really coming back with this. Might even be pushing out Thebes, though that depends a lot on how much value the individual player puts on the HP 5. Magical items, Dynasty, and then you would probably still build Thebes after, so hey. Dynasty Plate Helm, completely reworked, is now a tier 2 item for 1,400 gold with 40 magical power and 30 physical protections plus 50 health, and no longer any pen. Honestly, adds a good chunk of survivability here with the health and the same protections for 1,400. If you're getting pressured by physicals early, I would consider just building the tier 2 and maybe not even upgrading it if you want to, because the effect is really nice. The tier 3 from that is a bit strange. Tyrannical Plate Helm. 2,400 gold, not super expensive. 85 magical power, reasonable amount. 40 physical protections, not that much. This is just a 10 increase over Dynasty here. And 100 health, 50 increase over Dynasty. So you're not getting super tanky with this, but you're getting a fair bit of, or a relatively high amount of power. They say this item is intended for offensive supports, Guardian Soul Laners, and could be splashed on certain mages. My question here is which offensive support, which Guardian Soul Laner wants to spend this much on these low protective stats? That I think is a struggle here because it's not super high. It's not the best you can get for that price in terms of defensiveness. Also comes with 20% crowd control reduction, which is nice. And then the Pacifist, the strange part. If there are ally minions around you, they gain 20% max HP and 20% attack speed. Whenever an ally minion dies around you, you gain 5 power per stack up to 6, and that lasts for 15 seconds. So this can come with a pretty decent amount of power. This can come with 115 power, while tanking up or beefing up your minions. I think this could be interesting for solo with low clearing guardians. Say someone that plays relatively passive, say Sobek for example, maybe Artio or something. I don't know. Does Artio count as slow clearing? Whatever, you get it. Magical solo laners, where the minions will survive longer and pressure the enemy minions more, and that could be an interesting effect. And then after that, when you maybe cleared the wave, you get more power, or if your enemy clears very quickly, you get more power to clear as well. Again, the question is which solo laners benefit enough from this amount of extra power, because a lot of Guardians just don't scale that high, but there should be an application somewhere. It's going to be interesting. Stone of Fall getting yet another rework. Cost increase from 2,300 to 2,600. Increased magical power from 70 to 100, and increased magical protection. And kept the magical protection at 40. Cooldown reduction also remains at 10%. The new passive, you gain 20% magical protection of the nearby ally guard with the highest magical protection within 70 units. So say you have a Guardian with 150 magical protections, you would then get 30 magical protection from them, while you also have your own 40 magical protection. It's weird because it kind of relies on your allies building high amounts of protections. I am not sure what happens if you are the nearby allied god with the highest protection, so to speak. If you yourself have the highest protections, if it then goes off your protections, I don't think so. It's not what it sounds like. But yeah, it's odd. So it requires a mage that wants to use this, because it has mage stats overall, relatively low protection, cool interaction power, to be near their support. So I guess it makes sense in teamfights, but it's still going to be, I think, a bit awkward to fit that in over just, say, a Magi's Cloak or just a full-on magical defense item. I don't quite know. I don't quite know about this one yet. Maybe, I mean, the power increase is pretty hefty, but the price increases too. So maybe there's a place in certain games when the enemy team is very heavy on the magical damage, but then they might shred through your protections relatively easy anyways. New item called Ring of Hecate. Hecate. I'm gonna say Hecate. This one is a mage ADC item. 2,600 gold, 80 magical power, so for that price, not overly high power, especially compared to many items we have now. 20% attack speed, I had to look into that. Also not the highest, like the Demonic Grip comes with 30%, Haste Ring with 25, Telekines for almost the same price with 25. But this item comes with 12% lifesteal. Hitting enemy guards with basic attacks gives you 1 stack of 2% lifesteal. Stack up to 5 times, lasts 5 seconds. Meaning if you hit enemy guards, you can sustain very well, and then you have to hit the minions afterwards. It's, I guess, more of a boxing item that way. If it was on the wave, it would be very, very interesting. Like this, I'm not entirely sure. I guess it makes sense for Freya. But the others, I don't know. I don't know if I would trade this for just an outright higher power, higher attack speed item and Bancrofts. It's hard to say. It's very hard to say for me where this will land. But except for Freya, I think where it just combines nicely with the lifesteal that she has. I don't know, I guess. With this one, I'll have to see, because it's still relatively expensive, and it doesn't have a stacking mechanic or anything to it that would really push its viability in late game heavily. But at the same time, this boxing effect kind of does. But then you also need 5 hits to even stack it up, and it only lasts 5 seconds. So hard to place. Equally weird. Charon's coin. 2,700 gold, 80 magical power, 20% magic penetration, which is high now with all the changes that we had. The second highest magical pen item in the game. 20 MP5. So far so good. Relatively high cost pen item with a fair bit of power and MP5, but primarily focused on that pen. And now it gets crazy. Passive. On God kill or assist, a coin is flipped. If heads, you gain a stack of 7 HP 5. If tails, you gain a stack of 2% movement speed. Each effect can stack up to 4 times, and at 8 stacks, this item evolves. So you cannot get more than 4 stacks of each, and it's random at the beginning, but eventually it will force one of them until it has 8 stacks. You also gain 1 gold on every coin flip, which, yeah, I guess. And then once it's stacked, so after 8 kills, once it's evolved, on God kill or assist, a coin is flipped. If heads, you gain 150 health over 6 seconds, so budget made of renewal. If tails, you gain 5% movement speed for 6 seconds. You also gain 1 gold. I think this item has its appeal as a pen item and a stacking item. What I find weird is the evolved stack. So the base stacks, okay, I'm not quite sure about the HP 5, where that's coming from, but it's not terrible either. Even as a mid lane, it's not bad. The movement speed, of course, is a high value stat. Hyris said they wanted to remove movement speed from mid laners, now they're putting it back on. I don't know why, but whatever. Maybe they want to pretend like only Ao Kuang would build this. The evolution, on the other hand, is super strange, because it's RNG in late game team fights depending on, which one you get. And Mail of Renewal was already uncomfortable, often due to the anti-heal working so well against it. With this evolution, it's even weirder because anti-heal might work against it, or it might not, because you might get movement speed, and you might need health in a specific situation, or you might need movement speed, and it's just... yeah. Just super RNG, and I don't know why we need more RNG. But that's Charon's coin, so far. Shaman's Ring is removed because it was a very awkward item, and mathematically, it was usually the odd one out compared to items like Spear of Desolation. I think I've discussed it in enough depth for you guys to know that. I know many of you still disagree. You've heard it from Flayerboot, from Hyres, from Pretty Prime, confirmed by Alpha Jackal, and from me by now. So if you still want to believe it, if you still have that feeling that Shaman's Ring was good somehow, trust in the heart of the cards, Yugi, or something. I don't know. Your thing, not my thing. Shoes of the Magi. Decreased cost from 1,600 to 1,550. Removed 10 magical penetration. Increased magical power from 55 to 75. Interesting point that I was originally not thinking about. So A, it's a bit cheaper. That makes it a little bit more valuable. Because Shows of Focus gets the opposite treatment with the price being increased from 1,550 to 1,600. But minions usually have less than 10 magical protection. They even point that out here. And for clearing specifically, Shoes of the Magi benefit more from the power than they would from the penetration. Not for trading, not for boxing, not for damage, but in early game, clearing is often the more important stat. And in that regard, it actually may have more value than I initially gave it credit for, because I did not think of that aspect, which could be very interesting for some mages. And we could actually see Magi being interesting for some gods, at least, after all. We'll see. Spell Focus no longer has that old passive and now has 10% magical penetration. So that is a nerf, I think. Obsidian Shard, again, gets that whole overhaul. Cost increase from 2,300 to 2,550. 20% magical penetration, so like that Charon's coin. Removed the old passive, which was 15 to 45 magical penetration, percent penetration. And now instead, your first ability gets 10% magical penetration. This can only happen once every 10 seconds. That, I think, is a very long duration because many mages have a first setup ability, and often you will use this effect on the setup ability, which would be very unfortunate. The benefit of this is that this can go over the 40% cap that we have now. This additional effect can hit 50% cap, so if you're getting against a really heavy magical defense comp, you may still want to consider this. If not, you might want to consider other options, which we get to. But an interesting change that I think will mostly nerf this item overall. Spear of the Magus gets a nerf as well. Increase the magical power from 65 to 75. Rework passive from your damaging abilities. Reduce the target's protections by 10, max 5 stacks. Now it is subsequent hits of the same ability. Deal 5% increased damage, stacking 6 times. I'm not sure if how exactly subsequent hits will be counted for certain abilities. Again, I, for example, don't know what happens to Radiant's ultimate, but at least in general, this will mean that dots should do roughly around the same damage. Hyres did say that overall this will be a nerf to the item. Flavor did some calculations with this already, and they looked kind of similar to what we have in terms of damage output if you're just looking at a single ability. But what it didn't look at is the damage that carries over. We'll do my in-depth calculations on that in a future video, but the damage that carries over from one ability when you have applied the protection strat to the next ability you use afterwards, because that will not get the same amplification anymore, and that should be a significant nerf. Pythagorus Piece gets 10% magical penetration and loses 10% cooldown reduction. Going to be a strange one now. Don't really know where it'll fit in, but it might just be popular enough if the other pen options aren't valued enough. It depends on like how bruiser you want to go on your mage, basically. Typhon's Fang gets 10% magic penetration, and the power decreased from 80 to 70. That is overall definitely a buff and will give it more damage output in almost any situation except against very squishy targets. So this is definitely going to be interesting overall. Soul Reaver gets its cost increase from 2,750 to 2,850. Not that drastic, 100 in total here. The power gets reduced from 130 to 110, and then it gets 10% magical penetration. As an anti-tank item, I think this would still be valuable. And this brings me to another question mark, which is why did Ethereal Staff not get any nerfs? Because that is really what's pushing Soul Reaver out of the meta. I thought it would get a nerf. I'm surprised. I don't know what that means now. It might still be picked up as a pen late game option. I don't know. Maybe that's gonna be a thing. Staff of Myrddin. Added 10% magical penetration, decreased magical power from 120 to 110. Also, again, a very clear buff. This item still has a lot of good mixed stats and a unique effect that might work for certain mages, and I could see this being more stable now with a 10% penetration. 10 power lost in return is not a big problem. Sorcerer Staff reduced base health from 175 to 100, and Warlock Staff gets a complete overhaul. Added 10% magical penetration. Reduced base health from 200 to 150. The previous passive was 3 health and 0.5 magical power per stack, up to 100 stacks for a total of 300 health and 50 magical power. Now you get 1 health and 1 magical power per stack, up to 75 stacks. Easier to stack now. Still quite a few stacks. 75 health and 75 magical power in total. That means the new evolved Warlock Staff stacks result in the following item. 140 magical power, 225 health, not overly high in health anymore, but still a bit of health, bit of survivability, 200 mana, and 10 magical penetration. Interesting mix, might be worth considering. The question is if it's gonna feel strong enough to be warranted around the stage where you can even invest into a stacking item in the first place. Spirit Isolation. Increase magical power from 100 to 110. I think this will be a very strong item now whenever Divine Rune is not needed, because it was already honestly not a bad item before stat-wise, and just adding 10 extra power, no loss. That's just nice. Wrath of Tahuti, increased magical power from 150 to 160. Also a nice little bonus here. Soul Gem, increased magical power from 65 to 80. Still a lower end power item. Not sure how well this will do now, but interesting unique effect that adds a little bit to it, so maybe in late game it might be a bit more useful. Polynomicon, increased magical power from 75 to 85. Just a little bit more of a boost behind that. It wasn't super popular before, so I can see that being done. Chronos Pendant, decreased cost from 2,800 to 2,700, and increased the magic power from 90 to 100. So this just gets an overall value increase that might make it more interesting. I think it was already a decent fit for some mages, and I think it's going to be a lot more interesting now. I think especially a god like Janos would definitely consider it at this point. And Talonkine's Ring gets its magical power increased from 90 to 100. Also, an interesting item that I think is good enough on mage ADCs, and now will even give him a bit more of a boost that way. So yeah. Restored Artifact, that's the tier 2 of Wrath of Tahuti and Chronos Pendant, decreased the item price from 1,600 to 1,400 and increased the magical power from 50 to 60. Very nice benefits here overall. But you can see that stat-wise, like, yeah, it could be considered relatively early now. Just rush it. Just out of the game. 60 power. Could work. Could work. Thinking. I don't know. Probably not. Not really anything you want out of that unless you want to rush Chronos Pendant. But yeah, that's interesting. And then we have Enchanted Ring. Added 10% attack speed and decreased 5 magical power. That's obviously a buff for any AA guard, so it's still going to be more beneficial. Losing that 5 power doesn't mean much. Demonic Grip, decreased passive magical protection reduction per stack from 12 to 10%. We see the same treatment to Executioner, just a little bit of shred taken away in the whole picture of changing penetration overall. Wardstone reworked. Enemy from enemy guards within 50 of units have their magical protection reduced by 8 to now have their magical protection reduced by 5%. And Voidstone has the same treatment, with the power being increased from 20 to 40, but then the penetration being reduced, removed. So like no longer having 15 protection reduction, instead having 10% protection reduction. I think this makes this item more interesting for some guards, especially around late game. But of course, in early game, it'll fall off a fair bit. I think this percentage reduction aura. It's an interesting effect to keep an eye on, though. That's something that is very accessible compared to many other protection reduction pen items in here. It's just an easy 10%, even though it doesn't stack perfectly with the other penetration. Stone of Binding decreased physical magical protection reduction from 15%, from 15 to 10. I don't know how to feel about this. I think it'll not ruin the item. I think it'll still be a decent-ish item, but especially with Sovereignty also coming back, I'm not quite sure how much of a place it will still have, because it was kind of the alternative to Thebes if you want to go more aggressive. Hard to say how much this will still fit in. Then we have Caduceus Shield, Caduceus Shield, whatever you want to call it. Branches of Warded Shield cost 2,500, has 30 physical power, 35 physical protection, 35 magical protection, and 100 health. And the aura is allied gods within 70 units have the healing increased by 10%. If you have taken or dealt damage in the last 5 seconds, the healing is increased by an additional 15%. I think this is, excuse me, a very interesting item, because this is basically the Guan Yu item of Asclepius. I just want to check back the effect in terms of health increase, in terms of healing increase is the same as sort of Asclepius, but otherwise the stats are set up very differently. This is more of a protection focused item, which honestly makes it probably easier to fit into some builds, but then the mixed protections are also not always as beneficial. And sometimes you can build more synergy with health. So pros and cons. The power with 30 physical power is probably arguably lower than 90 magical power in most situations-ish. But then it also has 100 health. Actually, in terms of overall tankiness, it should be better than Rod of Asclepius, which only has 200 power. No, actually, it should be better. Also, a little bit cheaper. So, yeah, very interesting. Not that many gods will be able to effectively use it, but those who can, I'm sure, will make use of it. I can definitely see this on Horus as well. So, very interesting choice maybe for certain supports too. And then we have Curse Blade. That's now changed or like introduced in order to have a bit more of a attack speed focused item for those going into Toxic Blade and Witchblade. 1,250 gold, 75 health, 10% attack speed, and 5% movement speed. Not too bad. Definitely a better option than what was there before if you're looking for a more aggressive item choice here anyways. Gilad Shield used to proc on, like, if you use an ability on multiple gods, it used to proc full on all those gods. Now on multiple gods, it will only proc for 50% on the other gods that you hit after the first one. So kind of the same AoE effect that Berserker Shield has with basic attacks, only for the Gladiator Shield proc in team fight specifically, which I think is a reasonable nerf to this item for how cheap it is. Some gods basically don't want to trade it out late game. Void Shield. Increased physical protection from 50 to 60. And instead, in return, work the passive, no longer giving the flat protection reduction, instead giving 15% physical protection reduction, which I think, again, might make this more interesting for certain, well, not only solos and supports, but also junglers in place of Titan's Bane, which we'll also see a nerf. To say like, okay, I want to primarily focus on flat pen, but I want to have a little bit of percentage pen, a little bit of survivability at the same time. I'm going Void Shield. I think that should be relatively effective, and you get more protections now as well. So I think this is a very interesting path this is going down. Spike Shield gets the same thing now. Instead of 8 flat pen, it gets 5%. Silver Branch Bow gets a change where the power provided from the passive is now, instead of 1 power, it is now 1.5 power. I wanted to look at that a little bit more detail as well. So currently, for every 0.02 attack speed, you go over cap, you get 1 power. Now you still get less power than you get attack speed in terms of value here. You have to have, like, 0.02 attack speed for 1.5 power. But it still makes it more appealing to those who want to build towards high attack speed anyways, but have random situations where they can overcap, not necessarily on purpose. Specifically Apollo, but then also gods that, just kind of do it in certain situations, like Artemis, like potentially Medusa, if you're going into attack speed on Medusa for some reason. So yeah, it could be interesting to see who makes good use of this and how good the use really will be. But yeah, maybe Medusa might actually be the most interesting one because she also benefits a lot from this power. So pop your one and then pop your abilities or something. Could be interesting. Executioner gets the same tweak down. Instead of 12% reduction per shred, it's 10% up to 30% in total. Warrior's Bane decreased penetration, or yeah, protection. What? It says protection reduction. This is penetration. This is not protection reduction. What? This should be percentage penetration. It's decreased from 15 to 10%. And Titan's Bane gets the same thing, the same mistake here. Reduced from 15% to 10% minimum to 35% maximum instead of 40% maximum. I don't know. Nerfing Titan's Bane, I don't think it was as overwhelming as Obsidian Shard. I don't see it much. I don't think it's as popular. It's nah. A lot of assassins are already not picking it up that much anymore. I don't know. That's what I'm saying. Like Void Shield might be more interesting, especially like consider if you're in well, whatever. If you're jungler and you're getting a Void Shield, then your ADC will still get the benefit as well before they have Titan's Bane. And it synergizes better with the Executioner as well. That's all I'm saying. Like it's more pen at max level, but it doesn't have that much else. I don't know. I think they're trashing the Titan's Bane a bit too much for nothing. Hydra's Lament, that nerf is warranted. Decreased additional damage after basic attack from 50% to 40%. I don't know. Again, a weird one here. I think it should have been more than just Hydras. I think the Hydras change is good, but I think it should have been Transcendence. It should have been Heartseeker that's targeted as well. And I say that as a jungler. Poison Star increased the physical power from 20 to 30. It's always a struggle with the crit items to find the right choice, the effective choice. Maybe this will tweak a little bit. I think it's going to be a constant back and forth. Likewise, Wind Demon has the attack speed increased from 10% to 15%, which could be interesting for certain ADCs. Malice now provides a 10% cooldown reduction. I like that a lot. I think Malice is an interesting item, and I think this actually makes the item synergize with its own passive. And Malice was in this weird place where I think on Jing Wei it was used. But overall, you know, you have an ability that reduces your cooldowns but doesn't give you cooldown reduction outside of that. Like kind of like it would be like Spear of Desolation without cooldown reduction. And now that's kind of like fitting a little bit better together. And it's still a crit item as well. It's relatively cheap as well. So I think there's a place for Malice. I think maybe this will even help certain crit assassins somehow. Certain assassins that can go into a mix of crit and CDR. It could be interesting on like a Thor or something. You know, just chuck that in there with some other CDR power items. And just gamble on it. It's still a 25% crit chance, so it's not like you're never going to get a crit. And if it hits, it's a lot. And then you combine that with Hydras, and then you're going to have some fun. Soul Eater. This now gets an additional 5% lifesteal. And here I wanted to make a quick comparison as well, because this is actually a very interesting change, in my opinion. So we have Soul Eater on one hand, and we have Devourer's Gauntlet on the other. So with Soul Eater, you're looking at, which would show us the stacked stats here. So it's max stack. Soul Eater will have 60 physical power. It will now have 15% lifesteal and 10% cooldown reduction and healing you for 15% of ability damage. Meanwhile, Devos, for the same price, and with a much longer stacking time because it doesn't stack on everything, Devils will have a total of 65 physical power, just a little bit more. It will have a total of 24% physical lifesteal, which, yes, it's more, right? You have a 15% on one and you have 9% more, but it on the other hand does not have any ability lifesteal, whereas Soul Eater gets that 15%. And on top of that, Soul Eater also gets 10% cooldown reduction. And I honestly think that this might be the tipping point where we see Soul Eater being picked. Oh, and Soul Eater also has 200 mana on top of that. I think we might see Soul Eater being picked up. Maybe not by everyone, maybe not by all ADCs, but I think ability-based ADCs that have a reasonable way to apply the AoE effect to a wave should be able to get more out of Soul Eater. You will have more, like you have a much quicker way of stacking this, right? Because it's almost the same amount of stacks. It's Devils with 70 stacks and Soul Eater with 75 stacks. But Soul Eater stacks for everything that dies. So Soul Eater stacks twice as fast on a wave if you're just standing there and, you know, watching the enemy minions die as well. You don't need to last hit. So you get this stacked in half the time or quicker. And from that point on, you will heavily outtrade the enemy ADC. It doesn't have this consistent power increase, which the enemy ADC has. But once it's stacked, this thing is better. This thing is better for boxing until the enemy catches up and maybe gets the full thing. And even then, it depends heavily on the hunter you're playing. Like in Ullr, I think would just benefit more from the CDR now. So I think Soul Eater is the up-and-coming one, basically. That is going to make it interesting to see if we can, see more Bloodforge in there as well. Bloodforge currently being the one that has 15% lifesteal, but that's all the lifesteal it has as well, and 75 physical power. But I think overall Soul Eater might just be the best ADC item, depending on if you're after a little bit more than just raw power, right? I know there's some people that's going to be like, but I get 5 more power and I get a little bit more lifesteal, and that's all that counts. And sure, in a late game scenario where you're just basic attacking, that may be true. But in many other situations, I think Soul Eater will be better. Loner's Mask. Decreased damage dealt from minus 25%. This is so weirdly worded. Okay, let me rephrase that. Loner's Mask is getting a buff. Your damage is now only reduced by 20% instead of 25%, and your healing is only reduced by 20% instead of 25%. So it's a little bit more worth picking up if you're considering to go into Loner's Mask. There you go. Finest Mask. That's getting ruined. Removed 10 penetration, which was what made this item actually fantastic as a tier 2. The power is increased from 20 to 30 for physicals and from 50 to 60 for magicals, but that's just 10 power. That does not matter as much unless you're looking to use this for clearing, which I highly doubt you will, because at that point you're not looking to clear anymore where you're building this item most of the time. Wranglers Mask gets a similar overhaul with the penetration being removed, the 15 penetration, and the power being increased from 35 to 50, and the magical power from 70 to 85. I don't think, again, that will offset that, and I don't think Wranglers Mask will be as popular, but then again, it was mostly an Achilles item anyway, so hey. They say it will synergize with many of the season changes, and that's why they're keeping an eye on this. So yeah, we'll have to look into that in the context of those. But yeah, that's the item changes. Some nice things, some things I wish I could have seen. I'm really missing Transcendence, Heartseeker, Ethereal being looked at here, Warrior's Blessing being looked at here. So quite a few where I'd say that there's still work to be done, and I also think that the Assassin's Blessing overhaul is, again, not what we need. But that's what I'm saying for years now. Whatever. God Balance. Odin. Huge. Absolutely huge. Odin's Pulse. Let me pull this up again, because it's incredibly interesting to see just how strong this item is actually going to, this ability is actually going to be. So Odin's 3 Gungnir Smite is being reworked. And now it does 3 pulses. He holds a spear up and then he can throw his spear. Or you can throw it before for different effects. The first effect being an attack speed increase by 30%. The second effect being it basically homing in on the enemy and following them and slowing them by, well, it doesn't say. It slows, the pulse itself slows them by 20%. I don't know how much the other slows them for. It doesn't actually tell us, unless it's just a 20% slow again, which would be very weird. Unless it's just meant to like allow you to chase at that point. But the third pulse is the most important one in my opinion, because that deals extra damage to them. They all deal the same extra damage. And the third pulse slows as well. The attack speed buff can be massive as well, don't get me wrong. If you use it quickly and against an objective, that is fantastic. But for early game, I think the third pulse is where it's at. Because right now, you have 300 damage on the lunge. You have 460 damage on Raven Shout at max effect. And you have 250 damage on Gungnir Smite with 2 swings of 125 damage each. Sounds familiar? These damage values are exactly the ones, including scaling, that you currently have on Gungnir's Might. Including scaling. That is very important. So, if you let it pulse 3 times, you have a 50% damage increase over the current damage of this ability already. Okay? That is just part 1. We're not even getting started yet. So, you get a total of 375 damage plus 90% scaling from the pulse. The pulse takes 3 times. AoE. After the pulse is done, you get Gungnir's Might's damage on a single target that you throw this ability at, which is another 330 damage plus 75% scaling. That means this ability almost close to triples its damage. And that means the total damage of this is 375 plus 330. So we're looking at 705 damage here. 705 base damage plus 90% scaling plus 75% scaling plus 165% scaling. That is significantly more than both the 1 and 2. I don't know how like what I should say about this. And this comes with a 1.2 second stun. So what you can do with this ability is, instead of going in like you used to before with a bird bomb, well, you can still do that. You can, if an enemy is like not careful and you just jump in on them, yeah, and they don't have an escape, you just bird bomb them and then use this. Otherwise, you walk in on them or blink in on them. You use your 3. You pulse it 3 times. They're slowed. That's an easy setup for your 3 spear throw. You throw that at them. You stun them. They then take a massive amount of damage from that already. Have no way to attack you. You put up your shield and you leap at them and bird bomb them afterwards for the most insane amount of damage in the game currently, I think. That's how it looks like on paper. Maybe I'm missing something. Of course, it'll take a while until you actually get to that point where you can deal that much damage with it. But from what I can tell, this is going to be absolutely insane. That's all I'll say. And it's also the best clearing ability on level 1, by the way, I'm pretty sure, because it does a total of 135 damage with this alone. Is that correct? And that's more base damage than the 1 has, and more base damage than the 2 has. So, yep, best clearing ability as well. And then you have the 90 damage on a single target afterwards, which would be like instant clearing a camp almost. Have fun with Odin. And then the spears are also being reworked. The damage here is when you leave the ring with Phantom or a leap over the wall, you take damage. You take 140 to 420 damage, so an extra amount of damage as well, plus 75% scaling, and you also get slowed by 25%, setting up everything else that Odin wants to use afterwards. So he can just bird bomb on you if you jump out, and then he'll hit you with this beast afterwards, so have fun with that. Outside of that, you can now break walls, you can attack the walls, and they collapse, and you can walk out without getting this effect on you, but you have to do that first. And a portion of the wall can be destroyed when hit by 5 basic attacks. So it's not like you're going to easily break this. You're going to be stuck in there most of the time anyways, while Odin clubbers down on you. And if you stand close to the wall and you try to break it, it's also much easier for him to confirm his abilities on you. So no matter what you do, you're going to get hit by a ton. Also, keep in mind that if you die inside this ring, Odin gets a permanent bonus power amount, which is 5 power per stack with a max of 10 stacks, which is 50 power, which scales with all this stuff. It's insane. I think he's gonna be such a beast overall. His ultimate keeps the same cooldown as well, 75. The 3 gets a 2 seconds cooldown increase on the ability. That's the only downside here. The duration is also gonna remain the same. Yep, that checks out. Healing reduction same. So yeah, Odin. And much like Odin, Bastet is gonna have a lot of fun. So our new passive is Tracking Scent. When you damage an enemy, they get marked. That means they leave a trail behind for 3 seconds. And this trail gives Bastet movement speed when following them 20% movement speed, which is quite a lot. That is like old speed buffs levels. So that's definitely interesting for her chase potential, but it doesn't give her bonus damage anymore. Razor Whip changes ability from a sweep to an instant cone. Bless. This is going to be a lot more just useful. This is going to feel better because the sweep was just never really feeling the way it should have. And yeah, the whole effects is updated. And much more important, the third ability, Incendiary Claw, is now Bastet throwing one of the cats. No, she's not really throwing it, just sending it forward. And this cat, when hitting an enemy, instead of just slowing them, roots them briefly. And the cat will then keep attacking them. The cat has 2 hit points, so you have to basic attack them twice to get rid of them. And it will apply a slow whenever attacking an enemy. This deals 200 damage plus 65% of your power. And here we can again look at Bastet in comparison now to see how much damage that really is. Before this ability used to deal more damage, because before this it dealt 270 damage and 100% scaling. Now it's 65% scaling. This does, however, mean if your cat gets off 2 basic attacks, which is not that unlikely, then you will deal more damage. Then you will do 280 damage. And your scaling will also be higher overall because it'll then be 125 instead of the current 100. The cooldown is 2 seconds longer in return. The slow is slightly lower, 25% instead of 30%, but you get that 1 second root on top of that, which I would argue is more effective. And it costs a little bit more mana towards the top end. The cat hit points do not seem to be increased with higher ranks, so that's worth keeping in mind. And now the really big deal for Bastet, why all these changes are happening, is the new ultimate, Guardians of Bast. She summons 2 spirit cats to her side, and they give every ability additional effect. And I originally thought that they were just meant for AoE damage, but it's much more than that. So they deal a portion of the damage that Bastet deals. Initially it's 30%, and then goes up to 50% with each rank. And the duration of the ability is 12 seconds currently, which means with a little bit of cooldown reduction, you can use your abilities twice in that rotation, because Bastet's 2 is on a 13 seconds cooldown, Bastet's 1 is on a 12 seconds cooldown, Bastet's 3 is on a 12 seconds cooldown. So, you know, get like 20% CDR on there, maybe, yeah, 20% should be enough already, basically. And then use your ult and use your other abilities right away, and you will be able to use them again during the duration of this. And what it does is it gives you AoE effects for your ability with these 2 guardians copying your abilities, but this effect will overlap. And there is a point in each of these abilities where all 3 attacks overlap. And if you hit enemies on this point, then you will deal 200% damage with your abilities at max rank. You deal the 100% of your normal ability, and you'll deal the 2 times 50%. But even if you don't make that, you can still just, hit 2 of them relatively easily, and then you just get a 100 plus 50%. On the patch note, they also said that if you only hit one of the cats, it still deals 100%. I don't think that's true. It doesn't seem like that from this description here. But either way, it seems to be pretty overwhelming in total. So very, very interesting. And then, next up, we have Achilles. So overall, I think Bastet is also going to be stronger. And definitely more late game viable, while still being very good in the early game. Achilles gets his Radiant Glory nerfed. The physical power buff is reduced from 10 to 14% to 6 to 10%, down by 4%. Absolutely fair after his other buff where he had his range return and stuff. So yeah, it's just a bit of balance to him. And Artemis gets a relatively massive buff. Suppress the Insolent, increased the physical power scaling from 40% to 60%, will significantly help her clear. And we have to keep in mind that Silver Branch got buffed at the same time. So quite a few things for Artemis going here. Baron Samedi, Vivid Gaze, increased base damage from 60 to 240 to 80 to 240. So he should be able to clear a little bit better, especially in middle lane. That's the goal of this. Yeah, just finding his place a little bit more, which I think is good as well. Cu Chulainn, Berserk, increased power per level from 2 to 3. And I think that's pretty crazy because the other buff that comes along with it is... So, Cu Chulainn's ultimate, Spear of Mortal Pain, has its rage gain increased from 16 per god hit to 26 per god hit. Kind of trying to look into the stats a little bit here as well, because the power gain itself is also like, it does a lot for Cu Chulainn jungle especially, right? Or also for solo if you just want to go like have a little bit of damage. If you just throw the new Void Shield on Cu Chulainn, that should do so much for him in late game against even tankier targets. And then the ult basically, yeah, it's weird. I was checking if there's any reduction, because they showed that on the new skin, and I think they didn't have the values adjusted yet because for some reason the rage didn't go up that much. But if you hit 2 targets, you should get 52 rage. So if you had half rage, this will make you pop. Even if you're less than half rage, it will make you pop because of the threshold. So Cu Chulainn ult is insta-transform at this point, basically, in almost any situation, or at least gets you high on rage, and that's just scary when you have power increase coming along with that. And not just a little one, you know? That's like, what, 10 levels is 30 power, 60 power in total. That's, woo. I'm scared. But not as scared as of Odin. Freya, Brisingamen's Blessing. You increase magical lifesteal from 15% to 10%, plus 0.25% per level, capping at 15%. Just evening out a power curve a little bit. I think that is fair, even though I think she's not broken at the moment, but Harris is thinking that she might get a huge spike with the start of the season. That's just like a preemptive measure. Guan Yu. Increased basic attack speed per level from 0.9 to 1.25. This will help not only his laning, but also jungle, but also his laning, because keep in mind for him is relevant due to his AoE hit as well. And increased mana per level from 35 to 39, which of course helps a mana-hungry god like Guan Yu. And along with that, you also have that new healer item, which will overall make Guan Yu a lot more interesting, which I, as a Guan Yu fan, really like. Hades. Increased HP from 450 to 475. Increased HP per level from 80 to 85. He gets some stats of somewhere between Mage and Guardian because he is somewhere in between. And Pillar of Agony, this ability now provides Hades with 10% damage mitigation at all ranks in addition to the protections that he gains. Very, very interesting. I don't quite know how you even deal damage to him his ult now, because he has the prots now and the mitigation. They say it's just a low amount, but it's still 10%. 10% can still be a lot. So, yeah, scary. And Hades is already performing very well stat-wise. People just think that he's not good. Heimdall. Decreased physical power scaling per stack from 3% to 2%. Decreased the piercing shot physical power scaling from 95% to 85%. And through the realms, decreased initial hit physical power scaling from 110% to 90%. None of this should come as a surprise, just lowering his overall damage output through this and lowering individual damage output of the ultimate at the one through these other changes. Good changes. Heimdall was just a bit overperforming. Goddess of Demonetization, Wing Gust decreased damage from 35 to 115 to 30 to 110. So just 5 off each of those gusts, so 20 base damage. And the same with the scaling, 5% off each of them from 40 to 35%. So if you hit all of them, you lose 20%, but if you just hit like 2, you just lose 10%. I think that's fair because she's been doing pretty well still. Izanami, basic attacks increased return projectile damage from 25% to 35%. Yep, we can work with that. That means that she has over 100% scaling on her basic attacks. I would like to point that out. So that is going to make for some very interesting, unique build path, maybe, that very heavy power focused ones. Kind of thinking if you could do like a weird Transcendent Soul Eater combo. I don't exactly know how attractive Soul Eater is for her, because she works a little bit differently from other mages and from other hunters in that regard. But it could actually be more interesting because her AoE lifesteal is not as like Devils is not as effective for her. Yeah, it would be interesting to see if we could somehow. But at the same time, RC is very nice on her as well. But it could be interesting to see if you could somehow squeeze Transcendence, Soul Eater, and Malice into a build for her. Something like a CDR ability-based Izanami that also has super high power for her basic attacks. And along with that, Spectral Projection has its cooldown reduced from 16 to 12 seconds to 14 to 12 seconds, meaning that's a little bit more powerful too. Jingwei, agility, decreased movement speed buff from 20% to 15%. Decreased air movement speed buff from 30% to 25%. So a lot of the escape potential being removed here, or lowered here at least, which I think is very understandable. Though I think that she will still be able to get away very well as long as she gets a self knock-up or knock-up from someone and then just dashes out. The range is just crazy. Airstrike, decreased landing range from 55 to 45, also shortening the escape potential a little bit there. Nemesis, Swift Vengeance, increased physical power scaling from 30 to 35%. Yup, it's kind of a minor change. Not really much to say about that. And Nike, increased base HP 5 from 7 to 10, increased rend damage from 50 to 170 to 60 to 180, and Barrier Formation decreased the refire damage from 65 to 285 to 85 to 305. Overall damage output increase with a little bit of a health regen increase, mostly because a lot of these things were taken away from her in the rework, and this should even her out a little bit more. And we will see how well that works. Ram, base movement speed increased from 365 to 370. Astral Quiver, Ram now starts the match and respawns from death with a full quiver of arrows. Astral Barrage, decreased mana cost from 100 to 140 mana to 80 mana at all ranks. A lot of interesting changes here. I think especially the Astral Quiver is going to be very interesting in certain situations. I think that this extra arrows when behind or at the start can really make a difference for pressure in lane and for regaining pressure. And I think that's going to be potent. Especially, if you level 1 Astral Quiver 5 shots right away for whatever you're doing. I think that's pretty good. Now that you start on the camp, I don't know how exactly that will impact that, but we'll see. Sir Cat gets a major nerf. The first nerf here is on Deathbane, decreasing the damage from 60 to 140 to 50 to 130, which is basically per hit. So it could take off 30 damage, or if you crit 3 times 60 damage or whatever. But that's the minor part. The more important part is Last Breath. Decreased damage and added physical power scaling. 100 to 660, 180 to 660 true damage is the previous stats, and now it is 140. So 140 off the 40 off the bottom here to 500. So 40 off per rank, I think. Oh no, not quite. Well, that's a bit. I think the way those values are lowered. Nope, it's 40 of the first rank, but then afterwards the decrease is increased this is lowered to 30 per rank. Does that make sense? Yeah. So initially the first one is reduced by 40, and then afterwards it's reduced by 30 per rank. And instead it has 55% physical power scaling. This ability still deals true damage, scaling with your physical power. But the point is you need a lot of physical power to even get to the old damage value. Like if you had 100 power, this would just be 55 extra damage. So yeah, you'd have to have like 300 plus power to really make a difference and get more damage off the ult here, which in most situations needs a full power build. And in that regard, it pushes her out of the support high damage roll a little bit, which I think is a very good choice. Sun Wukong, Master's Will not get his knockback back, but he gets an attack speed slow along with movement speed slow on his 2. And Somersault Cloud increased the damage from 200 to 400 to 200 to 500 when dropping down. So this should be a little bit more interesting. The damage of that was always relatively low, and it was not much of a payoff in going in with the ultimate. Last but not least, Thor increased cooldown from 90 seconds to 110 and then scaling out to 90. Taking away a little of his overly strong early presence at the moment, and that's absolutely fair. And a god change that is completely missing that was pointed out to me is Lemmy, I think, said that on Twitter, that Yamoja did not get any nerfs, which is really weird, and I don't understand that. But those are the changes. I'm out of breath, I'm out of voice, and that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching. PTS apparently is not coming up yet. When it will be coming up, I will make sure to play some games there and maybe stream them as well. It all depends on when they're doing it now. They've delayed it until tomorrow, whenever that is. So for now, thank you very much for watching. If you're new to the channel and you want to hear all the Season 7 updates that are coming soon, feel free to click the sub button and wave the bell. It helps me out. And other than that, see you for the next one tomorrow. ZiSotto out.